Hola a todo el mundo, soy Laura y este es mi canal de YouTube Idiomas con Laura. Hi everyone, my name is Laura and this is my channel Languages with Laura, and today we are going to be talking about some old methods and some new methods of language learning. I'm going to go over my thoughts on them, what they are, and which ones I prefer. So I just finished my semester in university, and when we were preparing for our final exam in my Spanish interpretation class, we talked a lot about what methods we use to prepare for this exam, and that got me very interested in other people's language learning methods as well as mine, and what new things have come about for language learning and what old methods are still being used and not being used. So the first thing that I noticed was flashcards. I personally love the old method of flashcards where you have a physical piece of paper, a flashcard, an index card, and you write your vocab word on one side and like the definition or the translation or even a picture, depending on obviously your level, what kind of word it is, and how you learned best. That's kind of the old method, having a physical flashcard, versus the new method are using flashcard type applications, apps, or websites, because a lot of my friends were using the computer for their flashcards, and this is where I choose the old method. Like I said, I like having the physical flashcard. They are small enough that I can put them in my purse or in my backpack and take them with me, versus some of my friends said they like the computer one because they can do it on their phone and they always have their phones on them, which I can understand how nice that is. It doesn't take up a lot of space, but it is better to physically write out the words. It is better than typing it out on a computer or a phone, because you're actually writing the letters, which will help you remember the words, help you remember how to spell it, which for us, it was a written exam. So we needed to be able to write everything, versus the computer. You don't remember it quite as much because you're typing. It's each individual letter and you do so much typing in your day that you're not actually as going to remember it as well. I have read a study about this. It was a little while back, but I can try and find it again, but it is better to physically make flashcards. And the other thing is that what ended up happening is that one person in my class made flashcards on a website and then just shared it with everyone else. So while they were still able to go through and memorize the words, they didn't even make their own flashcards, which I can understand would be, in their minds, was a time saver. But for me, the value is mostly in making the flashcards and then using them. And I thought that they had missed out quite a bit on that experience, and they didn't have as easy a time memorizing the words. So flashcards, I personally like the old method, but I understand people who do like the new method. Another old versus new are dictionaries, having a physical dictionary versus using a dictionary website or an app. Again, if you're someone who studies multiple languages, I can understand why an app would be easier, because you can have apps that are specific between two languages or multiple languages, and then that way you're not constantly lugging around multiple dictionaries with you. But I think a lot of people don't use physical dictionaries anymore because they just see it as an outdated practice, when the reality is that dictionaries are still always being updated and publishing new versions with new words and new slang and things like that. Personally, I think whatever floats your boat. I am a huge book lover, and so I like having the physical copies. And when learning a language, dictionaries a lot of times will have other elements to them that not everybody always realizes, like pronunciation or sentence structure or other elements, and not just a word and its translation. But I can also understand the value in looking up a word and then going into the etymology of the word to help you remember it, or looking at multiple words and then being able to look at those and see which one is really the one that's best for you to use. So I don't particularly have much of an opinion, old versus new. When I'm in class, I use the new method of using an online dictionary, but I do have a collection of old dictionaries that I love very much. So I would say that's whatever your pick is. This next one is the writing exercise. So when I was in my Russian courses in university, they used a very old method of just repetition when it comes to writing. We had to write our vocabulist 10 times and submit that to the instructor. So we would write the same word, конечно, конечно, whatever it is, 10 times, and then the next word 10 times, and then the next word 10 times. To learn how to spell it, and if you said it while you wrote it, then you would learn how to say it, and you're thinking of the meaning of it. So they had us write it over and over and over again, versus a new method would be taking your vocab word and putting it into different sentences and writing those different sentences. So you're using the word in context, how you would actually use it. I can understand the value of the old method of being able to know the word, but I think the new method here is a little bit more valuable. Again, when it came to Russian, we were also learning Russian cursive, and so some of it was getting used to Russian cursive, but reality is that you're not going to say a word over and over and over again. You're going to use it in context, and so I found it to be much more valuable to write the word in various sentences that I would or would not, that I would use, but in different sentences, and then that way I'm practicing more than just the new vocab, and I am stretching my brain to expand past just the word and that singular meaning. This next one is reading. So a very old style, or when I was younger learning Spanish, they had us read stories to help us with our reading skills and learn the language. Some of these were stories for people who were learning the language. Those were not great to read. They were very boring, very repetitive, and they were too basic for some people, and other people just didn't care, so that was really difficult. Versus nowadays, I see a lot of people doing it as substituting regular parts of their routine for doing it in their target language, like reading the news, reading news articles. And I think I have to side on the new method for the most part. Reading children's stories in that target language for children of that target language, not for language learners, is still very valuable to learn about the culture, to practice the language, but you're not trying to reach too much above your level. That's still valuable, and if you want to use the language for something literary based, like you want to do literary translation, then yes, obviously this is a very good thing for you. But reality is, with our busy schedules and how the world works right now, I think the new method of substituting what you already do to the version of it in your target language, for example, reading the news, is extremely valuable, because you can find articles that are for learners, or you can read it for native speakers. It depends on what your level is, and then that way you are learning about what is currently happening in the world where that language is spoken. And so I think there's just a little bit more value in that, because it's more than just cultural understanding and language understanding. It's a little more richer for your learning experience, in my opinion, and based off of my experience. And this is someone who does want to do literary translation, so just keep that in mind. Going back to a dictionary type idea, one thing that I heard about recently that people were doing was creating their own dictionaries, and some people are now saying that they don't like doing that. Personally, I like having my own dictionary. I can reference my own, what I have learned and how I was using it if I need to go back and refresh. But I can understand if other people don't like it, think it's a waste of paper. You gotta do whatever floats your boat. I like having a notebook that has the grammar that I've learned, the vocab that I've learned, and then another notebook for exercises and uses. For me, that works because I kind of have like a cleaner, like untouched, this is what I've learned, this is what I should know or am in process of knowing, versus a notebook where it's got notes and corrections and just all different kinds of sentences. I personally like this method. Some people are starting to lean away from it, saying that they never use their dictionary. Again, if you don't use it, then yeah, what's the point? But I do like to go back and reference it, especially if I need to review a certain vocab list. that I haven't used in a while. This next one is kind of interesting because like textbooks, resources, what resources you use to learn a language. The old method is mostly textbooks and your teacher, or like talking to people. I shouldn't say your teacher, but really it used to just be a lot of textbooks and written materials. Textbooks, I think, do stand the test of time. I think textbooks are still very valuable to use today, but some textbooks are better than others. Some textbooks are better for certain people, and some textbooks just are better than others. So textbooks are an old method of language learning that I think are still very valuable to invest in, but that does not mean that you have to spend all of your money on an expensive textbook. There are websites out there where you can get them used, or you can get them for cheaper. So I'm always a fan of textbooks. I have so many textbooks and I love them all. I'm so happy with them. Versus kind of a new method of studying. Like I said, textbooks are still very used when it comes to language learning, but they're not the only way to learn a language. There's TV shows, there are podcasts, there are online applications and websites that connect you with people to help learn the language, especially with listening and speaking, because some textbooks come with like a website or a DVD that you can do speaking, you can do listening practice and even some speaking practice, but not all of them, or they're more expensive. So I think having the balance of the two, using a textbook for grammar lessons, vocabulist, exercises are great, but I do think it is quite valuable to find like a podcast or a TV show that you can kind of get more context of the language and get a more complete feel for how the language is actually being used, and not just having it taught to you, but seeing how it's used. I think that can be a very valuable thing. And speaking of vocabalists, that's another thing. An old method is to find a vocabulist either online or in your textbook and just go off of that, versus what I'm seeing a lot of people do nowadays is just going around and creating their vocabulist by what they encounter that they don't know. My opinions? I think preset vocabalists are a great starting point, especially if you are a beginner or you are entering a new topic. I think that's great, but they're not always complete. You know, sometimes you are missing words that you might want to use, or you don't realize that there are words you don't know until you're stuck in a situation. And I think that's where the new method comes into play really well. I don't think that should be your only method, unless you are of a much higher level with the language and you know a lot of vocab, and so you don't come across words you don't know as often. That the new method would be very helpful for that. But if you're at a like beginner level or an intermediate level, I think it's still valuable to have these preset lists. Even if you don't think you're going to use the word, it's still good to know it in case somebody else uses it. So you're not like, oh wait, I don't know what that word is, what? So you're not stuck or confused. So I think it is valuable to still have your old preset lists, but you can always add to them in time. You can look up words that are not included, or yeah, add to it. So here I think a combination of the two is what's most valuable. And then the last topic that I want to talk about with old methods versus new methods is that old methods tend to be very academic, versus new methods are a little more conversational. Learning languages in schools, you know, a lot of times you're using a lot of these old methods and it's very academic, having perfect sentence structure, talking about academic topics, and there is some value in that. Again, it depends on what you're using the language for. If you want to be a translator and interpreter of some of these topics, or if you are going to school in that country, this is great. It's perfect. It'll prepare you for those standardized tests that you will need to pass in order to get a job or go to school. That's great. But if you're going for travel or to talk with people or to just use the language on a little more of a regular conversational basis, the new method is a better way to do that. So a lot of this has to do with exposure to native speakers and how people are using the language, following people on social media, again, TV, music, films, things like that, and just kind of using that to inform what you learn and how you practice. You tend to pick up more slang, more idioms, unique and creative phrases, and just a more natural way of talking, and you get exposure more to accents and different dialects even, versus the academic is very like, this is what it is, this is what you will learn. So here I think it depends on what you're using the language for. Like I said, I am more practiced in the old way. I've done a lot of my languages through school, and so that's my starting point, but I want to be more casual conversational. So I'm currently trying to transition myself. You know, I'm learning Spanish in university to become an interpreter or a translator, but I am stronger at talking with people, except for the fact that I don't sound casual when I talk. I sound like an academic person, and it's a little weird. So I'm trying to transition myself, and even with French too, I'm trying to go from this, I've only ever studied it in school, and now I'm going to start trying to become more casual and conversational with it. So new method versus old method, I think that's kind of up to you and how you choose to learn it. I hope that was clear. I hope this all made sense. Let me know if you tend to align more with old method or new method. I do not think that one is better than the other. I think it really just depends on what your goals are and what your learning style is, because at the end of the day, everybody learns differently and everybody has different goals and ideas with what they want to do with these languages. So which ones align more with what you want to do? Do you want to be more conversational and cultural, and you use a lot of these new methods which have a lot to do with our modern day technology, or are you a little bit like me? You're used to the old school, you even like the old school, or you're using it for academic purposes. Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you like language learning content or travel content, feel free to hit the subscribe, because I do have some exciting content coming up that I'm very excited to share with you. So yeah, if you like it, subscribe. Otherwise, I do also have social medias linked down below, such as Instagram and TikTok, so you can follow me there for some more content that I make for fun. And yeah, thank you again for watching this video. Muchas gracias y hasta luego. Until I see you in the next video, adios.